Hey, this is StarCraft 2 History, and this time I am here to talk about Soulkey. Now, Soulkey was in my video for the third generation of champions along with Innovation. And Innovation goes on to continue to be one of the all time great players, one of the all time great Terran players. But this one's about Soulkey. And Soulkey in 2013, he does a lot of amazing things. Basically, he wins the first GSL in Heart of the Swarm against Innovation in a reverse sweep after Innovation goes up 3-0. It's the one where Innovation completely chokes out. In the Season 1 finals, he gets to the top 4. I believe he loses to Jadong, if I'm not mistaken. Let me check. No, it was SOS, right? Because Jadong was in Season 2, so it was SOS. Very close series. And then gets in the playoffs in Season 2. In Season 3, gets to a top 4 of that year at GSL, I believe it was against, and loses out against Sue, actually. So there you go. Basically, there's like, I think I said this in my podcast with Wax Angel, but basically, there's a hierarchy of Highlander like CVCs between all the all-time great Zerg champions, and they all end up beating each other to take on New Life, and Sue defeats Soulkey here. And then Soulkey goes on to the Season 2 finals, gets second place, losing to Deer. At Hawk 6 Cup, the final tournament of the year, he loses to Rain in another epic. Well, that's not the epic finals, but it's an epic run. Because basically, Soulkey beats Bomber, Soulkey beats Maru, and then he loses to Rain. And then he also wins the WCG of that year. So, all in all, an incredible year. One of the best years of any single player in StarCraft 2 history. And that's it, basically. After that, he has like some solid results. I think he gets like a top 4 in 2014. Top 8 in 2014. He comes back briefly for like a run in IEM Taipei in 2015, but basically he's done. And this is kind of Soulkey's legacy in a sense, because Soulkey was a guy, and I still believe this to this day. He made the wrong choice, and what I mean by that is, this is a player who was in the Kespa organization, and if you follow Brood War, this guy was on the fucking rise in Brood War. Like, I think if Brood War hadn't prematurely ended at the time it did, if it had gone like 1 or 2 years longer, I think Soulkey is the next Zerg champion, basically, to come out of that race. And he was really on the fucking rise. Like, it's easier to say that in retrospect because we know what he's like in StarCraft 2, and he was really good in Brood War. And so, what I mean by mistake is I think he could have done either of these two choices, and his career would have been a lot better either way. He could have either immediately quit Kespa when it went to StarCraft 2 and kept playing Brood War. And yeah, he obviously wouldn't get a lot of fame, he wouldn't get a lot of money or anything like that, but on the other hand, he'd play a game he probably loved a lot more, because basically almost every person who has played Brood War and StarCraft, at least of the guys who played at the top level, almost all of them preferred Brood War. Like, a few of them preferred StarCraft, but not that many. StarCraft 2, but not that many. And then but basically that's kind of the feeling I usually get, and there's a lot of reasons as to why. It comes down to the way the game works out and how much general freedom of expression you can get. That's my personal opinion. It's a bit hard to grasp, because like, I don't really talk to any of these guys. It's just the way I see the games play out. Anyway, he could have done that. Basically, he could have gone the Bisu route, and you know what? Even though he wouldn't be paid, he'd probably have made it pretty well as a streamer, just because it was very early on. So a lot of the hardcore Brood War fans were kind of starved for content back then, especially in Korea. So I think it could have worked out for him. Or the other choice would have been to quit Brood War early and join StarCraft 2 a lot earlier, because I think when I look at this guy's skills, when I look at this guy's talents, this guy is as good as Dark is now. He's as good as Sue is at his prime. And that's basically the point. Is like, I think he's better than almost all of the early Zergs. Better than Nesty, better than Leenock, better than Dongwei-gu. Not as good as Life, but like, Life is like an ascendant player, right? So it's not that bad, but I definitely think Soulkey could have made a lot more out of his career if he had either left with like MC and ST and MVP and those guys very early on, and then made a long career of StarCraft 2 playing in ESF, or played in or kept playing in Brood War after Kespa left. And the reason I say this is because basically there's a bunch of interviews and a bunch of shit that goes down with Soulkey as time goes on in 2014 and onwards, where it's pretty clear this guy has completely fucking burned out. Basically, the Kespa system has fucking destroyed this guy. And this is the other aspect of the elephant in the room nobody was willing to talk about, is the reason the Kespa system was so effective for Brood War Korea is because there were so many fucking players that want to play that game that they're fine with burning out every fucking player. Like, yeah, it's actually, like, if we're talking about just like player treatment, I think it's actually one of the worst systems that's ever been concocted in esports. But at the same time, you cannot deny, like, it has like some fucking crazy players come out of that system, and they don't last very long. They might last 3 months to a year, but goddamn, that's like an amazing 3 months to a year at the top level. But that's basically what I think happened to Soulkey here in StarCraft 2. Is he stayed too long at Kespa, it broke him, and then he never got that mojo again because he was mentally just drained, mentally just burned out of the game. Like, he can still play it as a hobby, but he can't like compete at it at a high level despite having, I think, every skill necessary. Just mentally, like, it broke him, like it burnt him out, and it was just too much. Like, when I look at Soulkey, I think of him as like the alternative. What would have happened if Life or like Tasia had joined the Kespa system instead? Because neither of these players have the mentality to like endure like that kind of thing, at least not at the time. Certainly not Tasia. It's arguable with Life, because Life obviously did join KT later on in his career, but like, it never really felt like Life was taking it as seriously as compared to the others. I could be wrong. Or maybe it was just because like he was able to like build up, like he had a lot of free time to play in ZenX, and then it got more serious in StarTale, and then he made the full leap to the Kespa system. Whereas he didn't have to like go through the entire like B teamer dishwashing routine, because obviously when he joined KT Rolster, he was a fucking superstar by that time. So were they really gonna make him wash dishes when he was their best player? I doubt it. So anyway, basically my opinion is like, Soulkey could have been a lot more if he hadn't joined the Kespa system in StarCraft 2, or if Brood War had elongated, or if he had quit StarCraft 2 very early on and joined Brood War. I still think he'd be playing very heavily in like the ASLs or whatever today, and I think he'd be a lot more successful too. And like I said, this is the downside of the elephant in the room. And when you consider how StarCraft 2 is in Korea, basically after 2013, there's no more like new pro players. Basically, the last guy that I know is notable is basically Sora, and he's not somebody I'm going to be talking about. Basically, he's just a guy who decided one day, I'm going to quit my job to become a StarCraft 2 player. Like, that's his entire story. I'm sure it's more interesting than that, but nobody's ever bothered like getting to him, just because he wasn't that successful. Like, he's had like 1 or 2 decent runs, and that's it. Anyway, for me, Soulkey was like the wasted potential and the downside of the Kespa system. Like, I think this guy could have done so much more. Like, when I had an interview with Thorn, basically he asked me like who were like one of the guys that would time travel to like a different time period, and like from like forward to back, I said guys like Nada, Tasia, MVP, but from current to back, I said guys like Sue or Soulkey, because I felt like these guys had such fucking solid ideas of how to play StarCraft 2 that they could have done legendary shit if they had been there at the beginning. Anyway, that's my those are my thoughts about Soulkey. I still think, despite everything, he's still one of the great Zerg players, StarCraft 2, and it's just too bad. I think it could have been so much more. See you guys later.